Hi, everybody. I've got the beautiful Sarah Vie here with us today. I'm going to let her introduce herself, tell you a little bit about the incredible work she does, and then we're going to fire off into one of our rabbit holes as per usual. Welcome, Sarah. Do you want to introduce
Yes,
yourself?
yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you for having me here. So my name is Sarah Vie, and what I do in kind of a nutshell is I help people shift that inner energy, letting go of old ancestral patterns so that they can become what I call manifesting magnets. And I really believe that the energy that we hold in our seven chakras is what is blocking us from, really not, when we think of manifesting, we always think of things. But I believe that, what is blocking us is living the most fulfilled and abundant and, love filled life that they possibly can. So I've written two books. I've written a children's book as well as a memoir. The memoir is all about how to release old ancestral patterns so that we can manifest the most abundant life possible, or really attract anything that we really wish, but we need to become the energy of what we want to attract. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
This is going to be so much fun.
Oh, good. Yeah, great.
This is going to be so much fun. I love both.
Wonderful.
Guys, I'm going to link everything underneath. So I'm going to get the information from Sarah, and I'll link her book. I'll link her, I've already got her website,
Beautiful.
link any programs, etc. But just so you know, if you're thinking, oh my God, this is my alleyway, it's going to be underneath
Great.
the video. Okay, but I think you're like, for you, what you're saying like resonates. It's a complete lock and key. I think so much of who we are is covered up by patterns that we think are ours and are actually from the collective consciousness, from the ancestral stuff. And it also, like I said, blocks not just our compassion, but our identity, because we're so busy manifesting the unlived dreams, the unlived traumas of people that came before, that we can't even have space to figure out who we are.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This was like this huge awakening that I had in my life because I couldn't understand, why I felt so out of alignment throughout my life. And I couldn't understand because it didn't feel right. I was always very connected to myself, but there was always something that I couldn't identify, I couldn't let go of, I didn't know what it was. And, throughout my whole healing journey, I realized that I was actually holding on to ancestral patterns, not just from my mother, but actually going back 2 generations. And in my memoir, I Wish I'd Known, I actually uncovered that we hold on to 3 generations. Sometimes they say 5, but I'll go with 3.
I'm 7, just so you know. I'm hard pulled on 7 chakras, 7 generations. I'm like, I think 100%. Yes. So it doesn't scare me. I think it's just so deep.
No, because it's like a contagion that, we pass down, behaviors, thinking, energy, because thinking is energy. And we, hold on to this in our cellular DNA. And then it was like a light bulb went off, like, oh, I get it. And then, that was the easy part. And then it was just the unraveling and revealing who I really was in my own identity. And it is the most miraculous feeling now that I am connected, not just to what I think, but who I am energetically. And it's the most magnificent, feeling ever. And I just never realized that, that was it. Scarcity, the idea of scarcity, not deserving, not feeling valued. Well, why all of a sudden when we're born do we end up not feeling scared? Feeling scarce, not feeling enough. Where do we suddenly get that from? We're not born with it. So why do we continue it on? So this is kind of what I kind of see it as like the cement that is built around our golden light, and our job is to kind of gently, like a what do you call, sculptor, gently chip away at the cement that is covering our golden light inside of every single one of us. I don't care who you are, you've got a golden light.
It's like, I specialize in medical intuition. So I work pretty much with people that have terminal diseases and with the hardcore stuff. And it's exactly the same. It's insane. I would say around 85% of diseases are in the family constellation or are 100% genetically inherited.
Yes.
You can literally see the karmic mechanisms, and you can see it, like I said, in the family field, in their own energy field, in the DNA. It's quite interesting as well. There's some really good books. I'll link them below to everybody, around the archetypes that influence the family constellations as well. So what we're trying to do is humanity that triggers tell me about your journey. Tell me a little bit about who you are, because not only am I curious, but I'm feeling the synergy here. So you said you were on your own journey, because I the way I get into this was I had a chronic autoimmune disease that manifested when I was 10, right? And it turned out my grandmother had the same thing. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to be ill for the rest of my life. And that's how I got into healing. And so you said there was quite a few things that you felt were out of alignment. And you also talked about manifestation, which really lights everything up, because manifestation is huge, right? You can manifest anything. So talk to me about how you got into your own journey, and talk to me about what manifested in your life as you were able to create this freedom for yourself.
So like I had said at the intro, that I've always, for some reason, been guided. I didn't know what the guidance was way back then. So I have always felt as if I've been guided. My life is exactly how it's supposed to be. So I was married for 32 years. I had this incredible life where, I had a lovely husband. I have four children. I've been on this journey of, bringing in the energy from my childhood, obviously, into my marriage. And like I said, I had everything, but I felt so uncomfortable. I felt, I was always reminded, like, what's wrong with you? You have everything. Why are you not happy? And, looking back on my life now, I was like, oh, because I was vibrating from somebody else's unhealed trauma. And I, throughout my marriage, we had a good marriage, considering neither of us were really connected to one another. And, the moment maybe not the moment, because it took years, but just this journey of, really beginning with meditation and understanding my thoughts, and understanding and being connected to what felt uncomfortable. I started to really peel back the onion. Was it difficult? Yeah. Did I do it every single day? Yes. Did I cry my eyes out the whole time I was healing? Yes. But I started to, reveal my truth. And, I always used to hear that and, rolling my eyes. I'm like, what the heck does that mean? But I really feel like I'm living in my own truth. So 4 years ago, I did leave my marriage. Happily, both of us, parted ways in a friendly way. But ever since then, I have manifested a life that I used to think was completely impossible for me. That is the manifestation part. And I think sometimes manifestation can be overused in social media. We think, oh, all we have to do is just think about something and suddenly it's going to drop from the sky and we have it. But I've really focused on the energy of who I am which is my birthright, the core essence, whatever you call it, and you manifest from that. So if you want deep emotional love, we get to feel it for ourselves. And if we want abundance, whether it's financial or living abundantly, we get to be that ourselves. And this has been my incredible opening to what is available to every single person in the world. And it has been just the most miraculous thing that I have done, and I never thought it was possible. I didn't even think I could write books. My 2 books have been international award-winning books, and I didn't even think that I could write. I'm in a deeply emotionally connected relationship with a man, and financial flow, whatever. But I never think of my life abundant because of financial flow, but I always used to think that was where you found your worth. But I travel the world, I speak, all over the world. And I never thought that was possible for me. My identity was that, I always will be a mother. I always tell my children that I am retired as a parent, but I will always be their mother. I don't want a parent. You decide, all my kids are all grown now. So it has been a path of finding my inner light and now helping others to find theirs, because like I said, every single person has an inner light. Don't be telling me that it's not me, because I really thought that was me as well, that I didn't have a light, either belonged to somebody else or I had to do something for somebody else in order to find my own. And that is BS.
That's not our audience. Our audience, like, they're a really lovely bunch. Most of them are very switched on. Most of them are healers and teachers themselves. But I think the 2 that are going to hit deep is the having to do something for others. A lot of them exchange their self-worth for helping. That's a very deep belief system and undercurrent that comes up consistently. And the mother thing, I think, is huge as well, that you have to sacrifice everything for your children, which is, I think that's a big, I think at least, I don't know, maybe 2,000, 3,000 women who are holding their whole divine life purpose until their children fly the nest. On an unconscious level, it's locked in the DNA. I will not have my life until theirs leaves, or they're adult or grown up.
But the question that I ask, so many people is, why do we find our value and worth from how much we accomplish or how much we do for others? I don't know where that whole paradigm kind of birthed. Like, where did we find that? Because it's such a a lie that we tell ourselves over and over again. If we do so much more, if we put one more thing on our list, we somehow can find our value and worth. I don't know where it comes from, but I definitely got caught up with that throughout my life as well. And I think as mothers, we think that that's where we're going to find our worth. I mean, I loved and I love being a mother, but it's, I did have to go through a lot to begin to release that idea. And when I started to shift, I was reminded, that I was abandoning the family. I was selfish. I was entitled. This was coming from I call him my husband. It was coming from my former husband, and I was reminded that because I was putting myself first, because I was not willing to put somebody else first, somehow I was abandoning. I was elitist. I was selfish, and I don't understand. I mean, that's patriarchal belief system. But
It's like ancestral trauma, like you know, it comes in streams. You have the individual what happened in your family, you have the collective consciousness, and like you have the collective consciousness in the form of archetypes, mother, father, grandmother, daughter. But then you have the wars that happened. We have the collective traumas that, you know, kind of came in. It's quite dark. Like when it's an area I have to work in when it comes to illness a lot, because so much illness is blocked creativity. And so much blocked creativity comes from that, and this is kind of go down the rabbit hole, right? Comes from what we get taught from our parents in the school system. And it comes in very strong actually around colonialization times and from religion, because you're not allowed to do what you want or create, right? Or connected to your intuition. Your worth to God comes from you serving, because that's control.
Yes.
Right. And when you
oh my gosh, yeah.
and when you go deep enough into the wound, you're like, well, of course, because they never learned the virtue of empathy. Without empathy, there's no connection. Without connection, there's no compassion. And without that, there's control.
Yes.
Right. So then it passes down over. I want to control the creativity so that I can have the illusion
Yes.
of collaboration.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Because I am, you know, my birthright, I am an incredibly creative person. I'm not a painter. I can't even draw a stick figure, but the creativity is to see life through the eyes of a child. Like everything now is like, oh my God, you know, I get so excited. Last night I didn't sleep very well, but I seem to have so much energy, and it's because I am now connected to my creativity, which is this natural flow and ease of who I am. And I remember in my marriage that I was stifled. You know, it was my husband who was the one who was the successful creative one. He was allowed to open to this control. He was, you know, I always think back like, oh, I see what happened. You know, he was very controlling, not in a he was emotionally controlling. He wasn't abusive or anything that dramatic, but he was very controlling because he wanted to keep my lid on, if you will, and keep me that I was, you know, the one who cooked and I was a stay-at-home mom at that point, but I was always, you know, I always was very entrepreneurial, but I couldn't be 100% creative because I was in this energy of his control of how he wanted me to flourish and how he wanted me to be the mom that he didn't have in his life. So I kind of filled his life through through what he wanted me to fill that he wasn't willing to figure out himself and clear. So I was like his little, you know, little helper. You know,
male ancestral trauma, like if you think that we've had women's movement has been very strong, feminism has created like you said, an awakening and a release for the deep seething rage that was in us.
Yes.
Men have not gone through the same thing. They have not had their own reconnection to self. And what I think is very interesting is that all the male disorders, whether it's narcissism, antisocial behavior disorder, all of them are still, this is so interesting, right? All of them are still by the collective consciousness taught as it's incurable. Bullshit, right? But that's what they get taught.
Yes.
There is no help for you. You are stuck there permanently, which is a complete illusion. You return to love, everything will dissolve. If you're willing to work on it, it will fall away. You will come back to your light. But they are very much still because it's the control. It's the controlling men. It's like men are such powerful spiritually, emotionally, physically, that if they tapped into their power, right? If they didn't give away it's so sad that you said like emotional beings that are so powerful are so disconnected from themselves, from their own creativity, from the ability to connect with a person, that they are stuck in control. It is heartbreaking that those people can't have a relationship with their own children, with their own soulmates.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is absolutely 100% right on, because my husband, he's a lovely, lovely human being. He's kind, you know, he means well, he's a great father, but he was unwilling to take a deeper look into himself because of fear. And he, would always comment to me like, I married the wrong person. He could never change. You can't, teach old dogs new tricks, blah, 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 blah. So it was my fault that I was going deeper. And, it kind of, I get emotional about it because we could have had a beautiful, continuation of our union together. But unfortunately, he was just unwilling to get help, to go to therapy, to like read books. He's an engineer, and so it was very black and white scientific, and it's sad that there are people that are not willing, but I can't. It's almost like I always think of the analogy. I felt like an oak tree in a little paper Dixie cup. I was just wanting so much to bloom, and I didn't have the courage, but years ago, to get up and leave. And but it is a shame because we could have continued on and discovered each other in this deeper realm of our marriage, but he was not willing.
If free will is an ultimate law, if somebody isn't willing, they're not willing. Even God won't come in.
No.
But I've got a little 2-year-old, and I've got my hubby, and it's exactly what it's very sad, and it's also like what you said, is like our humiliation around sexual abuse, around the emotional abuse. It's the shame is difficult to voice. It's difficult to break the silence, and I think we've been shamed in different ways. They've been shamed in you're not allowed to be perceived as weak, period.
Yes.
And I love when Brené Brown talks about it. She's got an amazing book called Men, Women and Worthiness. It talks about the different shame structures that get put in. Just quite an interesting parallel, because when you realize it's not quite a mirror, it's more like a room of mirrors. So you think we all think everyone's the same as us, but their wounds, especially when it's, like I said, especially the mother wound is different in a man and a woman based on how they get treated or conditioned. But this developmental stage, nobody tells you that empathy is a developmental stage, right? That you have to master it around 7 years of age. And if nobody teaches you, you're disconnected, like I said, behind a cement wall.
Yes. I wanted just to go back on a point, because it just downloaded that you were talking about shame and how you have healed others with their inner traumas, which causes dis-ease in our bodies. And one, I started to really study emotions and how they were affecting my body. And one of the deepest emotions that I felt, which had incredible energy in my body, was shame. And I brought that shame from my childhood. I'll explain all about this in my book, in my memoir. And one of the emotions that I really studied with a holistic practitioner was the emotion of shame, because I had so much shame from my childhood that I brought that into my marriage. And I started to study and I had this like chronic skin condition. And I started to study the emotion of shame and how it related to my, to these outbreaks that I would get. And every single time, I would feel shame with my husband. I would get, literally within 12 hours, I got the breakout. And then I'm like, oh, okay. So this is what I carried into. And the shame, my husband wasn't doing this intentionally. He knew how to shut me down, to turn my light off, to shut my creativity down by making me, or he didn't make me, because no one can make you feel anything, but he knew the buttons to push to make me feel shame, to turn my light off, and to feel this emptiness that followed me, from my childhood into my marriage. And once I started to understand and heal that energy of shame, because it has a tremendous force any really negative, limited emotion has these ways of affecting your body, not just mentally, but physically. And of course, now that I don't feel the shame, I don't have the outbreaks
anymore.
of this. It's like, and people don't understand that, like how powerful our thoughts create our emotions, which creates the energy that we hold in the 7 chakras in our body. And I have done so much work around healing this, and it really is mind-blowing when you get connected to this connection of the emotions. You feel a trigger, you get the thought, and that creates the emotion, which creates the energy in our bodies. It
turns on
is
the program, and then it runs in the unconscious mind before you've even thought about it. But everyone's relationships are a manifestation of how they treat themselves on the inside, right? So
yes.
If your light is getting turned on and you're living with somebody who was always had their light switched off, they're going to do to you, like I said, unconsciously exactly what was done to them. Hey, and I think we were taught to deeply fear that light, right? And that light was a disconnection from Jesus, that light was a disconnection from God, that light was evil itself. So the return, like you said, to our real personal relationship with the light is an intimate thing. It's a really intimate thing, and like it requires so much courage to listen to your heart, to listen to your soul.
It really does. Oh my, and so many people are afraid of this. I have a new book coming out in November.
Exciting.
And I don't have a title yet, but it's all about
still exciting.
I know it's about the energy of scarcity and how we hold that energy in. And I remember in one of the chapters, I remember sitting in my living room, and I just knew, like I've been contemplating, like I can't take this anymore of my marriage. But I remember how much courage, people don't really understand. I mean, there is divorces, 70%, I think, of marriages end in divorce. I don't know what the exact statistic is, but people don't understand when I will never be married again, but because there's really no need. But I can remember, and people don't really understand how much courage it does, especially for women, especially if you are a stay-at-home mom, to leave. And, would it have been easier for me just to kind of, pretend that everything was fine, settle for mediocrity, just put up and shut up? And I remember sitting in my living room and saying, oh my God, I've got to do this. I mean, I didn't know what my financial, end result would be. And it took every part of my courage to leave. And I think people don't really understand that, let's shame her because she's a divorced woman. But I'm embracing like that as part of my incredible abundant journey. That divorce is like, no, this was me like freeing myself. I mean, I don't mean to make my marriage sound horrendous, because it wasn't. I had a fantastic, I was like part of the family, but I never really felt like a wife with him. As long as I was like with the family, filling his needs, then I was fine. But I wasn't willing to do that. But I think that when we start to be connected to self and really trusting that we will be okay, because everybody is, if you want to believe that, is divinely led, and we will always be okay if we are connected to self, connected to divine or universe, God, Jesus, whatever our belief system is. We will be okay. Because I went from a stay-at-home mom. I was always puttering in entrepreneurship, and I always was very creative, but I never believed that I could, support myself. And now I'm, 4 years later, I have a house, I have a business, but the most important thing to me is that I have this incredibly energetically abundant life, that I'm seeing life through a completely different lens, because I am connected to self, I'm connected to my light, and everything. And here I am, I'm on the East Coast, awake at 5 a.m. to do an interview, and it's just so much fun. And I'm, rather than like, oh my God, this is so early, like, no, I want to be able to enjoy every minute of my life. That's abundance to me. I can have millions of dollars in the bank, and if I'm, we both worked hard. I worked at my career as being a CEO of my company, and he worked at his business as well. And we had a very abundant life materially, but I felt so scarce
Emotionally bankrupt.
and emotionally bankrupt. Now I have both. And I will be turning 60 in August, but I call it sexty. I'm 55 now, and sexty coming up in August. And everything is, rather than like, oh my God, I'm just getting so, it's like, oh my God, this is like the best part of my life. I mean, you can't stop me. And this is when and people have materially abundant lives, but they're living with very, like you said, emotionally, spiritually bankrupt. And I would rather have what I have now than having millions of dollars. Well, I mean, that's nice too, but
when you trust that God is the provision, or the light is the provision, it finds a way. It's the law of the universe. It's what you said about free will. You can't not bless humanity and not be blessed in return. It doesn't work that way, especially when, like you said, that divine light knows you're going to help other people. And it's like, okay, if I pour into this person, she will pour into others. And not in like I said, not in a self-sacrificial, overgiving way. It's just that when you are full, you naturally want to give. You get excited about it. It feels good, right?
Yes.
You don't have to tell somebody to serve when they are lit up. It's just what they do.
I can't help it. Like,
yeah.
my partner's like, aren't you? Because I had gotten back from a trip last week. I didn't get back home until like 1:30 in the morning, and then I had to watch the coronation, of course, at 5. It started at 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
and I was just, he's like, aren't you tired? And I'm like, no. And then I was like, doing things all day, and I went for a run, and he's like, aren't you tired? And I don't know where this energy is coming from. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute, I do know where it's coming from. It is coming from divine light. You cannot turn it off. I'm not on any medication. I'm not on any, hallucinative drugs or anything. I am literally high on the life of divine. Like I keep going. Like I get up at 5:30 every morning. I do my meditation, I'm prayer, and my journal. I journal every single day. And it is just this spiritual way that I used to hear other people living like, oh my God, how can they possibly do that? That is just weird. And now I am like, oh, right, I get it. What I used to kind of roll my eyes at, I'm actually living in this beautiful light of divine.
It's quite difficult because when, like, one of the things that comes up, particularly when I'm training people to become medical intuitives, is that they are so unaware of how powerful coercive control is. They are so unaware of how abusive it is, because it's, people accept abuse if you have bruises, and they accept abuse if you if someone's an addict. But when what we're talking about is coercive control, and it's you decided to go out with a friend and your partner mistreated your child. It's they had an argument or there was a tantrum, and then that you come home and that kid isn't okay, and you're like, I'm not leaving them alone again. It's you go out and then where were you? Why were you wearing that? Who were you talking to? A million phone calls. I can't find dinner. It's subtle things that let you know that the kids aren't okay, or the home isn't okay if you are not in it. And then you start going out less and less, and you stop communicating, and you start shutting down. And it's combined with gaslighting, because they're like, well, there's something wrong with you. I can't possibly do it, which is what they call them, what do they call it? weaponized helplessness, right? I don't know how to pack a kid's bag. I don't know when the birthday is or where the address is. And then there's this illusion. Men are very smart, just like women are very smart. Trust me, they know where things are.
Yes.
And if they don't, it would be the equivalent of you rocking up on a football field and being like, I don't know how to play football. And 6 years later, you're still there going, I don't know how to play football. They'd be like, well, pick up a goddamn manual,
Right.
and learn the
Oh my
rules.
gosh, this is so enlightening what you're saying. It's like, wow, yeah, I literally, well, I think part of it starts from the women feeling unworthy and unvalued, that because this was me, like, oh no, I'll do it. I'll do all that stuff so that you can stay in your role and I can stay in mine. And we are helping these men be helpless, because we are trying to find our value, our worth from doing everything. You know, I was 4 children, lots to do. My role, and I was just thinking about that the other day, that, you know, in my family, you know, I would cook dinner. Nobody would help me. Everybody was gone somewhere, but I was to do that. That was, you know, I put everybody just sat down, and I basically, I mean, sometimes it's like, oopsie, did I do that? Like, you know, serving everybody rather than like, hey, me asking for help, like, can you help me? So basically I was feeding into this, that, you know, and like you said, like, I didn't really adventure out and do anything because I felt like I had to be there to do and run my role. So I didn't travel, I didn't go anywhere, I didn't really see any friends because I felt so guilty that I wasn't there. And now, oh my God, I'm traveling all over the world. I'm taking retreats I have a retreat coming up in Egypt. I'm going to Puerto Rico. I'm going to Mexico and speaking. And I'm just taking every single opportunity that I possibly can to spread the light. But I wasn't doing that. I wanted to. And it was like this, you know, I kept filling my cup and I didn't have anywhere for the water to go. I was just kind of,
you grew up watching people not be validated for the work that you did. And like you said, also you grew up with this energy of women's work is easy, men's work is hard. So why would you need help, right? Why would you, it's just dinner, it's just mopping the floor. It's not that you're doing 6 jobs, organizing 6 kids' schedules, being the home. Okay, there's no, the invisible load is invisible, right?
Yes.
The servitude is just like you said. It's I think it's like you know when people say heavy is the crown. I think it's like a crown they cut around our hearts. Like, to be a good mother, you have to serve, you have to sacrifice, and you have to do so in silence. You
know, you do. I love that. Like, well, I didn't really love it, but I had to do it in silence. I couldn't say anything because you're given everything. It's my money. You need to, I will do what, and that's another, that might be another topic, but you know, you're kind of controlled as a wife. I mean, some women go out and make their living, but my living was for the family. And I'm very happy that I did that. But there is so much control when a man is making the money, because you kind of feel like, oh, I don't want to ask because it's, you know, in your mind. And I was reminded that, you know, he makes the money. I should be grateful for what is given to this might be whole nother subject.
No, but it comes up a lot with illnesses as well. There's a whole section on financial abuse, because it's like I said, it's so silent. And this idea that women should not talk about money, should not ask about money, should not need money. And if they want anything expensive, then they're gold diggers. They like, it shows a lack of character. It shows it's really used to shame.
And there was that shame again, that, you know, my husband would come to me and say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and buy this race car or whatever. And so he would do that. And then I'm like, and I would feel guilty for asking for money to do something extravagant. Like we in my book, in this new book, you know, we had the money, but he was deciding how it was going to be spent. And when we traveled, you know, I always wanted to have, you know, lovely, you know, I just wanted something, an upgrade other than the hotel that we would always stay in, which is kind of like the Premier Inn kind of idea. I don't know if do you have Premier Inns in Scotland? I know you have them in England, but it was just kind of a 3-ish star with the basics. And I wanted to have, you know, a lovely, luxurious hotel once in a while. I understand that it is expensive to take 6 people for a trip, but we had the money, but he decided that no, we're going to be at a 3-star because I'm earning it. You can't decide. And I would always say, do you think we could stay in something? Nope, we're good. And now I get to decide how I want to spend I love, you know, it doesn't have to be the Ritz-Carlton, but
No, but let's
I
put that down.
yeah.
The idea that I had this exact same thing with my mom, and it wasn't until my son was born that it's quite sad, but I'm going to be completely honest. It wasn't until my son was born that I actually understood, because the gaslighting was so powerful. I really was like, well, my mom shouldn't want the expensive hotel. She should be grateful when I was a little kid, right? Dad has a point. But it's exactly what you're saying. It's not about the expensive hotel, it's about the rest. An expensive hotel has childcare. An expensive hotel has like a space for you to rest. The cheap hotel, the guy gets the holiday, the kids get a holiday, but you don't get a holiday. You're still getting up 24 hours a day with the screaming babies and still dealing with all the food. And so there's nothing for the kids to do. So you're entertainment 24/7.
Well,
You know,
yes,
it's
exactly.
you don't
Well,
get
I
to
think
rest. And it's a very strong message. We get to rest, but you never get to rest. And
no.
blocking the rest, oh my God, there's over 7, like men live shorter lives and they tend to die sooner. But of the women that survive them, there's over 700,000 in this moment that have severe long-term chronic illnesses because of this. I didn't get to rest for 20 years.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
their nervous system is in this permanent, and it's so wrong.
Yes. Well, I love that. And I think that, you know, abundance is the allowing. It is not about the experience. It's about what are you allowing yourself to do? And as women, you know, we feel guilty for wanting more, wanting to experience, you know, more than what we're given. Because as a wife, I had to be appreciative and grateful for what was given to me because he was the one that had the power. But now it is reverse. And now I'm, you know, I mean, I'm very careful with my money but I allow myself to experience, you know, abundance. Abundance is in, you know, lovely, lovely places. And, you know, one person's allowing is different from somebody else, but it is about allowing yourself to experience, you know, what you want and what you desire.
It's what you're saying. Like it's very interesting because they're doing a number on, like you said, the roles. They're doing a number on the gender roles, but women multiply what men give them. So it's if you'd been given abundance, you would have multiplied it. If you look at my marriage, and there's many other women who say the same, like when I was with my partner, what he earned in a month compared to now has been multiplied. Because like you said, the whole 9 to 5 thing is based on the idea that you have someone supporting you at home. It's based on the idea that you have that strength, that light, right? Giving you the container so that you can then expand. But if they don't come home and act as the container for us, it just goes and goes, and there's no grounding. It's like electricity that's not grounded, that can't be used.
Wow. Yeah. And that was me. Like, I did not feel like somebody was lifting me up for what I did, because the problem is he would always notice what I did wrong rather than what I contributed and I felt like a complete failure because I was always reminded that I didn't take the laundry out of the dryer, or I didn't cook something long enough, or didn't taste, you know, so everything was magnified of what I didn't do rather than him being a successful business owner. And I was always there. I was always, you know, making sure that he was hitting the dinner was cooked and all the kids' needs were taken. I mean, there was no one there to lift me up. So I stayed in this ungrounded, like you said, place of unfulfilled energy. And now I have a partner who is, I don't need anybody to fix me. I don't need anybody to make it okay, but I just need to be lifted to my greatest potential. And I've always believed that was always available to me. And I was frustrated because it wasn't happening to me.
Oh,
so I felt,
my husband's a Taurus and I'm a Scorpio, so we lock heads, and we're also different cultures because I'm Brazilian and he's American. So Brazil has like areas where it's much more backwards, but areas where, because it's more backwards, it's also much more forwards because no one's had a chance to mess with certain things yet. And I had arguments that came out when we were in exactly the roles that you're talking about that the poor man didn't see coming, and which put us back into balance because it was kind of unconsciously moving in that, like I said, in that space. But like, it was so crazy. I remember exactly that. Like, you didn't do the laundry, you haven't finished this, or the kitchen isn't clean. And I remember, this is the thing about marrying a therapist, I was like, you're not angry about the kitchen being clean or the laundry being done. You're angry and you're jealous because I prioritize my emotional connection with my son and you don't. You prioritize the financial security of the family. So I'm giving you permission to prioritize your relationship with with our son. But I'm not going to stop prioritizing my emotional relationship with him. I'm not going to, like, they don't want us connected to our children, and I'm not giving him over. I was like, and I don't think you should either. You've already done this, because this is the thing. He's got 3 stepkids before, and I'm like, they already took that from you the first round. It's like, it's up to you, but I'm not doing it. I'm not handing over the most precious thing in my life for the kitchen to be clean. I'm not going to try and prove to you that I am good enough with that. I was like, I'm going to focus on him. And we can, and exactly the same thing. He was like, oh, we can't afford a cleaner. We can't afford this. I was like, for starters, you aren't paying for it. But for second of all, I can't afford to destroy my son's developmental attachment years. The price of that is too high. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands in therapy. I know how much it cost me to repair my relationship with my parents. I was like, versus 100 quid or 200 quid a month to have someone help with the cleaning. I'm like, this is the thing, that having the voice to wrap around the pain versus the generations of silence makes such a huge difference.
Yeah.
Even with intimacy, because he would say to me, I remember him throwing at me, you don't have the energy for intimacy anymore. This happens to all women after they become mothers. And I was like, it doesn't happen to all women after they become mothers. I was like, you're not sharing the night shift. There's nobody else here. You need support. I was like, this happens to all people with sleep deprivation. Go talk to the CIA about sleep torture. It's like, my sex drive is fine. It's like, my sex drive is absolutely fine. Give me a couple of, Give me a couple of hours to catch up on sleep. My sex life is fine. Yeah. I was like, but I can't do sleep deprivation and emotional intimacy at the same time.
Oh my God. Like, what? Woo! I mean, my God, this is like a therapy session for me. Like, oh yeah, this was controlled too. Like, I felt like I didn't feel connected to him. But the only way that I was able to feel energetically connected was by intimacy. And even though I was exhausted and I didn't feel good and I felt like a failure and, all this, I was still available for that, even though, I had to get up and tend to all the children it is amazing what we women, what we have been brought up to believe, and then we are manipulated into thinking that we have to do it all, and therefore we're not feeling. My sex drive was fine the whole time too.
You were putting words to exactly what Brené Brown describes in her book. There's Men, Women, and Worthiness, and there's I Thought It Was Just Me. And she says, for shame for women is a web. Do it all, do it perfectly. Don't ever let anybody see you're struggling. Do it in silence. Right? Yes. Shame for men is do not ever be perceived as weak, period. And if you think about it ancestrally speaking, like, for example, my father's a doctor. My husband, like yours, is a business owner. So people don't buy from men that are perceived as vulnerable, that are perceived as emotional. They don't give opportunities to those men. They don't give roles to those men. And men humiliate other men if they are not perceived as being able to control their family. Right? So for them, not being able to control us, means they will lose money, they will lose position, they will lose status, and they will not be able to protect us. And so they're like in this, so we're like, why do you have to be right all the time? It's like, well, who trusts a doctor that isn't right? Why do you have to, who trusts a financial advisor that isn't right? So even if they're not right, they unconsciously, like the ancestral is, I have to protect my position, otherwise I will lose everything. And we think we're arguing with a man when actually we're arguing with an archetype. And we don't know why the hell it's hitting us at 1,000 miles an hour.
Oh my gosh. Oh, this is so right on. I mean, so many things are, now that I can step back from it, like realize like how incredibly controlled in every area of my life I was. And, and I don't think he really understood what was happening in his life. I mean, he now has a girlfriend who is 23 years younger than him. And this is now, he's continued this same pattern through now. Like, oh my God, didn't we already talk about that, 2 weeks ago? And now he's able to continue the same like controlling pattern with her. It's fascinating.
If you don't learn, this is the thing, it's a developmental milestone. If you do not have empathy, right? You need control. It is not a want. You need connection, and there's no connection without empathy. So it's a very tough, like you said, wound to be stuck in. And it's an illusion, because like I said, the person will start to resent you. The person you love the most in the world, the resentment will create that wall. And then you'll be lonely because you'll be wanting
and
to
that
connect.
was yeah,
it's a mess.
and I definitely we definitely had a wall between us that neither of us knew how back then how to go through it, what to do with it. It was just too high for both of us to climb together, and I stayed on one side of the wall eventually and he was on the other, and there was absolutely no connection. I mean, the only thing that really was keeping us connected was intimacy. That's it. But there was nothing attached to it. And
like, this is like, obviously my opinion, I wasn't there, but one of the interesting things is that men are actually more emotional than women. All the research shows they're actually more sensitive and more emotional than women. All the romantic acts throughout the whole of history, the poetry, the music, the dining, all of that is men pursuing women, right? They are profoundly emotional. But exactly that, if you take a little boy and you shut down his emotions, and I kid you not, I have to fight daily, not like actively fight, but both energetically and in my presence, defend my son's right to have emotions. Because the number of people, whether it's a play group or whether it's my partner, whether it's my mom, who really believe that little boys shouldn't cry, that they shouldn't express their feelings, that it blocks them developing any kind of emotional intelligence and any kind of collaboration, negotiation, connection skills, right? Which makes them very easy to control. But if you imagine how sensitive they are and how emotionally intelligent they are, because like I said, our survival, the survival of the entire village, this protection providing, this is for real. Like, they had to know if something bad was coming. They had to get ready. They had to lay down their lives, ancestrally speaking, for us to eat and survive and sleep, right? You don't do that unless you're very emotionally invested in someone. Point blank. You do not die for someone unless you're emotionally invested in them. Right. So for them to be able to take that and cut it off at the root chakra, right? That you are not allowed to connect emotionally unless it's during sex. The day I realized that my husband couldn't connect with me emotionally except during sex, the world shook under me, because I'd been brought up my whole life thinking men only want sex, men are all about sex, men only care about your body. And then here was the truth, that they'd so emotionally castrated him that this was the only place he was allowed to feel. And then they told me that it made me worthless if I connected to him in this ground.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Like, you bastards. I was like, this is my soulmate. I was so pissed.
Well, in my husband's life, his mother, my mother-in-law, she told her children that she never will say, I love you, because children should know that their parents love them, so they don't need to say it. So this is how cut off he was emotionally. And I saw a part of him that was so emotional, and it was like, oh my God, I know it's in there. but he wasn't willing to continue that, that connection to himself. It lasted 2 weeks or so. And it was the first time when I said I was going to leave. And he was absolutely like, no, you can't, and he changed. He was desperate. I got a new car out of it. And, he was trying to keep me together, to keep me there. And that was the first time I ever saw his emotions. So it's kind of sad.
It's really sad. It's a prison. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because one of the things that you'll know this from energy work is that when we're taking down our own walls, we know how lonely it is to be behind them, but we've got no idea how difficult it is for the person to be on the other side trying to get in. Right. And it's so hard because we don't want men to be weak either. We don't want to see their wounds. One of the things that they say in that when you're starting to learn to be present with male shame is that women would rather men died on their white horse than see them fall off. So for us to be present with that, it's true, isn't it? We'd rather they died on the battlefield than come back. What happens to a man if he comes back? If he's wounded, we shoot them.
Yes. Well, my mother being English, men don't show emotions, and I was taught that, if men cried, you're weak, oh, it's embarrassing. And I have this partner now who is so in tune with his emotions. I mean, through me, he's learned how that it's okay to be, to cry and to be emotional. I mean, we're just so incredibly connected to one another emotionally, and that's what I've always wanted, so. But this could go on,
Yeah, we're this is you're right. We run over. I've loved this conversation. I would love to do it again because we've got the financial areas to explore. We've definitely got the whole manifesting relationships thing to go deeper into. But thank you everybody so much for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. I've really loved spending time with Sarah. All her programs are linked below. Feel free to invite her to your ears. Well, she says she speaks and she teaches and she travels. So note that in mind, retreat people and organizing workshops and the online group, because I know there's a big group of you listening. So get in touch. Don't be shy. She's an incredible person.
Beautiful. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure.